Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the March 16th, 2021 regular meeting of the Forsyth County Board of Education. If you'd all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have an agenda. Any changes needed?
No recommended changes.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as shown?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Darla, second by Tom. All in favor? That's unanimous. First up tonight, we have recognitions. The first employee of the month with Mr. Joey Perkle.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to present the Employee of the Month for this month, which is our food service. It's a food service director from South Forsyth High School, Ms. Dawn Garrett Martin. We also would like to thank Jim and Nix for continuing to sponsor our Employee of the Month. There were a lot of positive comments that were submitted for Ms. Martin. I actually have worked with her this year. She actually is in the Class A leadership program, and so it's been a pleasure for me to get to know her on a more personal level. But Ms. Martin is there are several things, like I said, written about her, how that she is the epitome of a hardworking, team-leading employee. Her staff loves her. She's very involved in the community and doing outreach things with South Forsyth High School in the community. She gets very involved with their culinary arts program and helps even Dawn Martin teach some of the culinary arts classes with some specialized things for cafeteria workers. And so she really has done a phenomenal job, and she's an outstanding leader. So we would like to congratulate Ms. Dawn Garrett Martin on being nominated and receiving the recognition of this month's Employee of the Month.
Well deserved. She's been there for a while. I mean,
She has been there for a while, yes.
she's a great lady. So thank you. Next up, recognitions, Board of Education. Dr. Bearden, did you want to?
Yeah, this is actually School Board Appreciation Week in the state of Georgia, and really want to thank our 5 board members for their dedicated service to Forsyth County schools. And a couple of good exemplars of that was this past week. Friday, we had our celebration of excellence, and our board members were out delivering lunches all over our community. And then Saturday, we had our vaccinations. We had about 2,400 of our employees vaccinated, and our board members were greeters at both sites. We really appreciate all of your work. It did not go unrecognized. So thank you all for your service to our community and to our children. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You all make it easy for us, and thank you. We also got a lot of thank you notes. We all received some emails and some thank you notes from the staff today. We very much appreciated.
And some sugar back there.
A little bit of sugar back there too. Yes, so thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. There was a lot of stuff on there. We're making some important purchases for the system and some improvements. Has everybody had time to review those and have any questions or concerns? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Tom.
Second.
Second by Darla. All in favor? That's unanimous. Our next agenda item is public participation. Board Policy BCBI sets forth the rules for public participation, and copies are available on the back table. Anyone requesting to speak to the board must sign a form indicating they have read and will follow the requirements of the policy. Tonight, Mr. or Mrs. Davis has requested to speak to the board. Public participation is designed to allow citizens to speak to the board, and board members do not respond during this part of the agenda unless they have specific answers for the presenter. Is it Mr. Davis or Mrs. is speaking tonight? Are they here? Not present?
There's someone in the hallway.
Double checking, Mr. or Mrs. Davis, do you want to speak? We'll give them a second to see if they're out in the hallway. They're not present?
Okay.
Okay. We will then close the option for public participation at this time and move on to our next agenda item. Next, we have under presentation and discussion. First one up is High School Improvement Committee recommendation with Ms. Dawn Phipps.
How do I click? Okay. Good evening. It's great to meet with you again. This is a follow-up to the conversation that we had when you had the retreat meeting, and we had members of our High School Improvement Committee share with you the work that we've done over the course of the past year, and wanted to then follow up to that meeting to let you know that we took those recommendations and the things that we shared with you. And in February, we had a high school principal retreat day. We talked about a variety of things and planning and prepping for the next year. And one of the things that we discussed in the course of that day were the recommendations from the High School Improvement Committee. So today I'm just going to give you a follow-up to what action steps the high school principals would like to take moving forward. Just a quick recap, the High School Improvement Committee was just a year-long process in which we took a look at the procedures in Forsyth County schools, and we also looked at practices and procedures in high schools across Georgia and across the country, really focusing in on our secondary system relating to scheduling, grading, reporting, focusing on the whole child, continually keeping the SEL component of our students in mind. With the goal to have better representation in the future for Forsyth County Schools secondary students, and to be sure that we're ensuring that we have equity for all of our students. So one of the things that we discussed in the last time we met, we were discussing scheduling. We discussed redefining how we determined a full-time high school student in Forsyth County Schools. Currently, we determine a high school student that is full-time by having a minimum of 7 courses. Of course, that's different for seniors. They have a minimum of 4 because of IE squared. This year with COVID, we made a modification to that where we allowed students to have 6 classes to be considered full-time students. And the recommendation moving forward is that we continue that starting with the 21-22 school year. If you look at most large districts throughout Georgia, they follow a 6-period academic schedule. We didn't want to go to a mandate where students were capped at 6 because they currently are offered the ability to have 7. We wanted to continue that opportunity for them if they so choose, but understanding that 7 classes might be a lot for some students, and this would give more flexibility. Also, as we transition and look more at virtual options, and some of our schools are looking at hybrid versions of some face-to-face and some virtual classes, that providing students with only 6 classes would allow for some transportation time, more flexibility, more personalization moving forward. The other thing connected to scheduling was the importance of professional learning. One thing that we've learned this year, it's the silver lining that we keep talking about with COVID, is that the professional learning that we've been doing in Forsyth County, in the high school level particularly, has been very job-embedded, focused, and really leaning into the professional learning community. So the recommendation from the High School Improvement Committee, the high school principals would like to follow up and continue with this recommendation, is to build in professional learning once a week into the academic school day. Basically do a late start where we would run the buses as we normally run buses, so there wouldn't be any adjustment to that. But basically the schools would be on a rotation for some teachers would be engaged in professional learning during that late start. So for example, a rotation where maybe English, social studies, and a fine arts content would focus on professional learning, while the other teachers would engage in remediation, SEL, supervision of students, and that kind of thing. And then they would do a rotation. That way, a school could go through a whole cycle of professional learning that's job embedded, very intense, not only for the school's focus of what professional learning they have, but also for our district initiatives as well. The next item that was part of scheduling in the recommendation was the block scheduling. There's been lots of discussion about a traditional 7-period hybrid, which some of our high schools do, or then transitioning to the AB block. This year, because of transitioning in COVID, we've focused, and all of our high schools have done an AB block. So there was discussion about continuing with that. The consensus and the recommendation from the high school principals is that we continue to let that be a local school decision, because we have some schools that have different programming, especially connected to enrichment, remediation, social emotional learning, and they wanted to have that flexibility in offering whichever schedule was best for their community. And then the next item in scheduling was the idea of transitioning to a 0.5 credit courses at the end of each semester. This was an area that had a lot of discussion, because it's going to connect to the next slide that I'm going to share with you about Forsyth County's move to review our assessment, grading, and reporting practices. And a lot of what we were talking about doing with that 0.5 credit really stemmed from some of our grading and reporting practices. And so they wanted to table that decision to see if the work that we do next year and the coming years would actually address that issue, where we wouldn't have to make the change. As far as grading and reporting, the focus was that we have a more system-level design, deep dive look at grading, reporting, and our practices along those lines. The recommendation, of course, is to do that for this next year. I will tell you that at our high school improvement committee, we actually launched that work, really digging into the principles of assessment, and that's really the design work that teaching and learning is going to be focusing in moving into next year. There's big work, lots of discussion, lots of changes in education and how things have happened over the course of the year. So our grading and reporting, our assessment areas need to change as well. So we're having lots of conversation about that. There's discussion about
The question is, just to start looking at it next year, or to start?
Yeah, so what we're doing in teaching and learning right now is we're really digging into those assessment principles. Mrs. Rice has taken us through some protocol with our principals, assistant principals, as well as our content specialists and other people and other departments within Forsyth County Schools to really do a deeper dive into those processes and practices that we're using. And then our plan is to start rolling out some phasing of that at Leadership Retreat in June of this year. It's an ongoing process. It's big work. Oh, I'm sorry. And then there was conversation about valedictorian, salutatorian. It was part of that race to the top and that drive to have more AP courses, more quality points, and that drive for valedictorian and salutatorian. The recommendation is that we keep valedictorian and salutatorian, which was the recommendation that we shared with you, but the high school principals really like the idea of us expanding our recognition programs for those students. We have so many of our students that are honor graduates, and so we talked about expanding those to honor grad status and high honor status, so that we're really pinpointing the great work that our students are doing, not only just for the one or two, the Val and Sal, but for a number of our students that are really excelling and really pushing the boundaries. And then in grading and reporting, we talked quite a bit about quality points. As you know, students get a quality point for AP, dual enrollment, and IB courses. Along those lines, though, a number of our students will seek other places to get more of those courses, to have more quality points. That's part of that race for class rank and those types of things. And so the idea was, and this was the recommendation we made, the high school principals were very much in favor of this, to set a maximum quality points that a student can earn in a year would be 8. That aligns with students that are full-time dual enrollment, and so that would level the playing field for our dual enrollment students, for those students that stay engaged with us in our face-to-face classes. And then the other thing that was connected to that was to remove class rank from our Forsyth County transcript. Because so many of our students are high achieving, you may have a graduating class of, let's say, 700 students, and you may rank 200, but you still have a 3.5 GPA, and that's not a true representation of the great work students are doing if you just solely look on class rank. So this is a bigger item that's going to take a lot of work. Not only do we need to change our regulations when it relates to these two areas, but it's something that needs to be rolled out with a freshman cohort. And we're so late into the school year now, and we're already preparing for courses for next year, and our rising ninth graders have already received information. So we didn't want to change the information on this point. So the idea would be that we would make these changes with the ninth grade cohort beginning in the 22-23 school year. And then that gives us time in this fall to make those changes, create a communication plan, make changes to regulations, and that way everyone coming into that school year in that 22-23 year has all the pieces coming in. Yes, ma'am?
So do the quality points earned, does that factor into their grade point average or no?
Yes, so all of our courses, so we're on a 4.0 GPA. So when a student is taking an AP, a dual enrollment, or an IB course, instead of their A is figured on a 4.0 scale, it's figured on a 5.0 scale. So an A in one of these courses is going to have a higher GPA calculation because it's on a 5 scale.
Okay, so if you had someone, let's say, the maximum quality points you can earn is 8, but what if you had someone who went over the 8 just on their own? Would
So
that
there-
factor in?
So they
Or
would, they
no?
would still earn, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
yes. So if the students, let's say they had 8 and they took another course through Georgia Virtual or something like that, and it was an AP course, because it's past the 8, we would still honor their A, but it would be calculated on the 4.0 scale versus the 5.0 scale. And that's really more about equity and leveling
Yes.
the playing field for those students that have the ability to become valedictorian or salutatorian.
Okay,
And what was interesting going through this process the last couple of years, and I know Don will echo this, these two recommendations we heard from students. They felt strongly that we need it, and they knew it wouldn't impact them because they understood we couldn't change the game in the middle of their high school career. But they felt like for the future of Forsyth County Schools, from a student's perspective, we needed to address these two issues.
yeah, and piggybacking on that, I mean, what I love is that you did receive the feedback from the students, and you worked it in, and you were like, it was student-led to
The
see.
students were the starting point for all of
And
this work.
I just
So-
love that.
Yeah, I
So
do too.
thank you for doing that.
I do too. So that's the end of our recommendations. I don't think these are, so as far as I understand, and I'll lean to Dr. Bearden here, as far as policy goes, I think the recommendation for a full-time student would be part of a policy change that we would turn to in future weeks. But the other documents,
The other documents are all administrative, so it's not something that would require a vote on your behalf, but we wanted to obviously make sure you were informed and that you agreed in the direction we were moving before we did move forward. But anything that's written in policy, yes, we would have to come back and amend a policy. The rest of it is administrative.
And I like that you're starting with the cohort, with the freshman class years out, so the kids that are already in process and already figured out, they have their plans in 8th grade of where they're going. So this puts it out far enough that there's time for them to plan ahead and make a plan. So well thought out.
all right, any questions?
Yeah, I just want to say, as you know, Dawn is going to be transitioning to Focal next year. She has done a tremendous job leading our secondary education over the last few years. And, our high school principals have worked really well together these last few years on some very challenging issues. These are not easy issues, and you have lots of different opinions coming into these conversations. And the fact that they're all on the same page rowing this boat forward is really impressive, and that's really a tribute to Don's leadership, and we greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure and honor. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next is policy IEDA revision, Ms. Tim Keiser.
Good evening. As you can see on your copy of this revision to the policy, essentially what we've done is we've updated the language from the earlier policy. We've established both expectations for the elementary level and the secondary level. So what questions do you have, if any?
Pretty straightforward. Any questions about this? Okay, if not, this will sit on the table, as it always does, for 30 days and come back for a vote. All right, great.
That was easy.
You get the award for the
Right.
shortest presentation ever.
Yeah. All right. All right, finance report with Mr. Larry Hamill.
Good evening. Today, we're going to talk about the February 2021 financial statements. As always, we're mindful, we keep goal 3 in mind. The month ended with about $151.3 million in revenue. As you can see here, based on cash receipts and payments. Last year, we had about 140 million even. That 11 million is kind of about the amount of money we increased our fund balance by last year. So that's kind of a cushion for us going forward into the next couple months. Just FYI, you probably heard about the $1,000 that the state wants to send out to all of the teachers at the school level and the pre-K money. Unfortunately, that's something that has to be paid up front before they don't give you the money right away. You actually got to pay it first, then submit the data, then get reimbursed. So just FYI, I want to make you aware of that. So that $11 million kind of help us with that process.
So,
But we don't have a timeline on when we're,
March 28th, they're
March
going to
28th.
vote on it.
okay.
And then they're going to send out the reports on all the people that came out of the October CPI report who are eligible for it.
Okay.
And then we got to go back and look at our reports.
I've got to imagine that there's going to be some school systems that might have a challenge with that.
Yes, I believe there are.
Okay.
But we're not one of them, so.
Well, I guess
good.
we're blessed, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Year to date, we are at 80.63% collections. This time last year, we're at 80.01, so we're about 0.62 ahead. I do want to point out, on the ad valorem, we're way ahead of schedule. We've already collected another $700,000, so we're going to be about down to $2 million left to collect for the next several months. At the rate we're going, there's no reason we won't collect all that. That's good news. We're definitely ahead on tangible tax. There again, we did not know what the year was going to look like with COVID, and we were just trying to be as conservative as possible, but we definitely will collect more than what we had in the budget for that. Real estate transfer tax, we're right on par for that 2.2, and we're ahead on collections on title ad valorem tax. We definitely look like we might beat that number as well. And a lot of these numbers that we budgeted for 21 were very conservative, just not knowing how the year was going to be. On the expense side, we're at 64.91% paid. This time last year, we're at 66.96%. We're down 2 percentage points on what we paid out year to date. There are certain areas that, we've got some savings and instructions, some positions we didn't hire versus some of the money in for subs that we're not paying out because, we can't get as many subs. And also both maintenance and operation and bus services, transportation are down between both of them about $1.5 million, $1.8 million, just because they're not spending as much money. On the debt service analysis, we're at $75 million. This time last year, we're at 52.8. A lot of that has to do with the money we're collecting on the SPLOST 5 category in terms of getting ready to finish up the SPLOST 5 payments on the bonds, and we'll have that money in there to go forward with the last projects that were included in the referendum. And we were authorized $35+ million for all that. And that is the money that's going to be paying for that and for the last few bond payments. Also, the Treasury, you see it's $10,000. It was $8 million something dollars. We cashed out our last T-bill. We don't have any plans on buying any T-bills right now. The rates on the 1 and 2 years are still in the low sub 20 par points. An interesting thing is the 10-year T-bill rate has jumped up to 1.6 dramatically just in the last couple of months. That has a lot to do with the amount of cash chasing after interest rates in the bond markets and other locations, and also the amount of money that's floating around in the markets. On the investment summary, we were $176 million last year. We're at $237. We are still spending down the 2020 money from the bond issue, and that would be spent pretty quickly going forward. Good news on this one. As you can see, the average total collections is 3.48. The last 12 months is 3.8. We're averaging about $343,000 more a month the last 12 months than we overall average. This time last year, we were at $3.345 million collection rate, which means we're about $132,000 per month on average above. And just in the last 12 months, we're $476,000 averaging more per month based on last year's collections.
But the Christmas spending did end. That was kind of a,
Right, February usually is a low month, because usually what happens is you got December and January, and then kind of February just kind of slows down, and then you get the spring, and it comes back with March, April, and May.
Yeah, but you're
Still-
doing
still
apples to
higher.
apples comparison from last year, it's
yeah.
500,000
it's-
more, yeah.
It's still higher, but, yeah, okay.
With the elementary accounts, they are down about $1 million. We had about $5 million in their accounts this time last year. The receivables is $270. Last year, we was about $750,000, and the expenses about $293, and we spent about $577. That's going to be true for all of the schools, high school, middle schools as well. The middle schools are about 1.4. They were about 1.7 last year in terms of what they had in the bank. And the high schools are actually the only one that's gone up. Last year, they're about 4.47 million. They were at 4.77 million. And again, all of the activity is below at least a third or less what it was last year at this time. With that being said, the high schools have gone up. The high schools last year were only about 39% of the balance. They've jumped up to 47. And of course, the elementaries have dropped the lowest. They were 46% last year. They dropped down to 39. And that's the financials for February 2021. Any questions?
All good? Thank you, Mr. Hammond.
Thank you.
Next, under action items, we have school calendar 2022-23 with Mr. Perkel. This topic just never goes away, does it, Joey?
Hopefully after tonight.
Yes. Again.
Okay, I presented last week, presented to you the 22-23 student calendar. We talked about that, so at this point, I just asked the superintendent for a recommendation for the 22-23 student calendar.
Recommend approval.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Tom? Second. Second by Wes. Any questions, concerns, discussion? All in favor? That is unanimous. Next is the revised school calendar 2021-22.
Okay, so we also talked about this last week, and so to make the revision for this calendar that you approved last year, which is the 21-22 student calendar, the revision that that we talked about was to move the end date for first semester from December the 22nd to December the 21st, and to move the last day of school from May the 25th to the 26th, and to move the post-planning day from May the 26th to the 27th. So basically, you're moving a day up at the end of first semester and a day out at the end of second semester. So that was the revision that we discussed. So at this time, I'd ask the superintendent for a recommendation.
I would recommend approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion and a second, and that would make the two calendars therefore pretty much the same. That's
Yes,
the
ma'am.
idea. All right, all in favor? That is unanimous. So therefore, we need to do the employee calendars for 2021-22. Dr. Salome? Moving right on through.
Good evening. Thank you all for approving that student calendar, and we have put before you the employee calendars based on the student calendar that you just approved for 21-22, and we're looking for approval of that, please.
Recommend approval.
Motion?
So moved.
Motion by Tom, second
Second.
by Lindsay. All in favor? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, next we have points of information. Dr. Bearden?
I think you have
Oh,
family.
sorry. Oh,
unity.
sorry. How did I miss? I crossed it off
Yes.
quickly. Family Unity Week. Wes, do you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, so about a little over a week ago, Commissioner Molly Cooper contacted me and said that the Board of Commissioners will be recognizing the week of March 21st as the Forsyth County Family Unity Week. And this idea started with the Rabbi Levi Mintz from the congregation Beth Israel, and it's about the idea of when we were about a year ago just going into the COVID pandemic, we were all looking at positive motions, what was going on with it, and it stemmed to the unity of family. We spent a lot of time together as a family. We talked to a lot of people that said, hey, the good part about this is that we are having dinner together as a family. So they just wanted to recognize that, and as the school system, I want to thank Jennifer Crotchlow and Ms. Morrissey for working on a proclamation so that we can also recognize the week of March 21st as Forsyth County Family Unity Week.
All right, so I will read it now. A proclamation by the Board of Education of Forsyth County, Georgia. Whereas Forsyth Family Unity Week is dedicated to celebrating and recognizing the families of Forsyth County School students. Whereas Forsyth County Schools families are a child's first teacher, laying a critical foundation for future success. Whereas Forsyth County Schools families are essential partners in the academic, social, and emotional development and support of all students attaining the attributes outlined in the learner profile. Whereas in the past year, Forsyth County Schools families have demonstrated courage, resilience, and patience as they stepped up to become learning coaches for the children in their care. Whereas in the past year, Forsyth County Schools families also unselfishly supported others in the needs by providing donations and funds and took precautions to keep all in our community healthy. Whereas, as the world begins to move safely from COVID-19, let us all endeavor to commit to focusing on the importance of strong families by encouraging continued communication and spending quality time connecting with one another. Now therefore, the Forsyth County Board of Education does hereby proclaim the week of March 21 to 27, 2021 as Forsyth Family Unity Week.
Thank you.
That's great.
All right. And that was nice for the Board of Commissioners to reach out to us to do that together for our community.
I do believe they're going to read their proclamation on Thursday.
Yes.
I think you should probably formally vote on that to adopt it, so I would recommend approval of Family Unity Week proclamation.
Wes, do you like to make the motion on that?
So moved.
Motion by Wes, second by Tom. All in favor? That's unanimous. Dr. Bearden?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd like to add is, as I said earlier, we did have our vaccination clinic on Saturday. I just want to publicly thank our community partners again, Browns Bridge Church, Lanier Technical College, the Department of Health, Georgia Emergency Management. All those folks stepped up to the plate to help us tremendously. Obviously, our lead nurse, Heidi Avila, did a tremendous job working with other leaders in our school system organizing the event. All of our school nurses who participated to help us out. We had lots of staff there. Of course, Mike is here tonight, he and his team, and of course, Debbie Smith and Cindy and her team. There was just a lot of folks involved in putting it together. And, you know, I think when you get a comment, and there were several of them, that it was as organized as a Chick-fil-A drive-through. I thought, well, you know what, that's a pretty good
Gold standard.
testimony to how well things ran. And literally, you know, as you know, those of you who are vaccinated, you have to wait 15 minutes after the vaccination before you can leave. And I heard so many people say they were in and out in 20 minutes. That counted registering for the event, getting the shot, waiting the 15 minutes, and back out the door. And so it was just really impressive, and it took a total team effort. So I just want to thank everybody in our school system who was involved in making that happen. And the only other thing I would add, as you guys know, I share data with you every day on our COVID numbers. Fortunately, we continue to trend down in our community, which very much mirrors our state as well. We're really now at a level where we were around the first couple weeks of November. And then, of course, we had the big spike before we got to the holidays, and certainly after the holidays. Hopefully, it continues to trend in that direction. And just encourage everyone, especially with spring break upon us, please remain vigilant. This virus has not been defeated yet. It's not behind us, but there certainly is light at the end of the tunnel. And if we could just continue to work together and remain vigilant, hopefully we can have a very normal 21-22 school year. That's certainly the goal. That's all I have.
And I would echo the staff did a great job. Jennifer Crotchlow worked hard. Dr. Salome and Mr. Evans were at the place where we were at Linear Tech, and I know I think we had a good time working our, and Tom Cleveland was with us. And I know some of you guys were up at Browns Bridge, but I think the staff did a great job. The teachers and the staff that came in and out were really appreciative, so thank you to everyone for that. All right, is there a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of personnel and land for the affidavit?
So moved.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Lindsay. All in favor? Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Motion by Tom, second by
Second.
Wes. All in favor? That's unanimous. Is there a motion to approve personnel items A, 1 through 14, and C, 1 to 14?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Darla. All in favor? That's unanimous. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Darla,
Second.
by Lindsay. All in favor? That's unanimous.